second biggest city, Porto.
Do you really want to live in a tourist district? So, do your research, be prepared. Alright, welcome back. Today, we're looking at why moving to Portugal in 2025 could be your best decision ever. So this is a video from Spain Speaks, and as usual, I'm going to compare it to an Australian perspective, being an Australian. Okay. Firstly, like and subscribe, Spain Speaks. Supporting all these channels are important. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. All right, so let's get into it.
Amigos, Stuart here from Spain Speaks, and today we're going to look at some of the pros and some of the cons of moving to this country, Portugal, in the year 2025. So let's go. Now, Portugal has definitely become a hotspot in recent years for foreign residents, for digital nomads, other people looking to improve their quality of life and enjoy everything that this country, Portugal, has to offer. Is it the beaches? Is it the relaxed lifestyle? Is it the rich Portuguese culture? Whatever the reason, Portugal is still on many people's radars, including my own.
Okay, so the key to doing your research is understanding what you're wanting when you move. Okay, so you really got to understand what sort of Portugal you're looking for. You got to treat it like what you're doing in Australia. Okay, so if you're a worker, you're going to want to be around where the jobs are. Unless you're a digital nomad, then that kind of, you can do what you like. If you're a retiree, are you going to really want to move to the inner city of Lisbon or Porto? It'd be like moving to the inner city of Melbourne or Sydney. It's got to be what's going to suit your lifestyle. So definitely do your research, look around. Are you in need of transport? Are you in need of being close to medical services? So yeah, definitely really have a good think about what sort of Portugal you're looking for in that respect. So it's it closely matches what your lifestyle is like in Australia. So that way it's not going to be a huge adjustment, and it avoids later frustrations like, oh, I didn't expect this because, I wanted this. So, yeah.
Now, for many people, Portugal is all about the lifestyle, the laid-back Portuguese lifestyle. Well, I'm going to tell you that for a lot of people, the lifestyle here is not all that laid back. But if you're coming to live here, perhaps as a retiree or somebody who has a flexible job, you're earning your money outside Portugal, you can get a very laid back lifestyle here. That's a pro, but it also has some cons. And one of the cons for some people could be that the lifestyle here is just too laid back, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that if you're not in a big city here in Portugal, let's say you're not living in Lisbon or you're not living in Porto, the lifestyle can be a little bit too laid back for some people. Things happen slowly here. That's what locals like. Everything is about slow living, slow eating, slow cooking. Everything can be a little bit too slow for some people, so keep that in mind. But for me, it's a pro, because even coming from the city that I live in, Madrid, Spain, things here move at a whole different pace.
Okay, so I don't really understand too much about what he's talking about. I've lived here for a couple of years. I haven't seen that side of it, to be honest. I mean, obviously it's relaxed and slower pace, but compared to Australia, kind of doing that anyway. So it really didn't make much of a difference to me. But when you went to a restaurant, I haven't noticed anything as far as slower service goes. Yeah, it really depends, I guess, on which part of the country you are, but never noticed any difference.
And for some people, as I said, it can be a little bit frustrating having to wait longer to order things in restaurants and in bars, having to wait longer to get bureaucratic things done. And that's something that I'll speak about a little bit more later on in the video. Bureaucracy here in Portugal, some of the pros
Yeah, bureaucracy is a whole different beast.
And cons when it comes to that. But in general, that lifestyle, something that I like, might not be for everyone. And as I said, that's something that you need to take into consideration before moving to a country like this. But if you are looking for that laid-back Portuguese lifestyle, don't worry, you will find it in a hurry when you come to this country. Now, one of the big draw cards for me of moving to Portugal, and let's say 2025, would be the weather aspect. Now, I know what some people are going to say. Portugal has Atlantic weather. One day it's good, the next day it is terrible. That
Just like Melbourne.
is true. But today is the 30th of December, 2024. And look at the sunny day that we have today.
Okay, so Portugal being a north to south country, it's markedly different in weather pattern to what you get in the south to what you get in the north. North is a lot cooler. You're close to northern Spain, close to the southern France, whereas south, you're on the Mediterranean. So vastly different weather patterns.
Absolutely fantastic. Now, the weather here can vary north to south, west to east. The interior parts of the country are going to be very, very hot in the summer, milder on the coastal areas, milder in these coastal areas, I should say. Doesn't get.
So you do need to do your research if you're looking for Mediterranean weather or that closer to match Australian weather. You'd want to stay in the southern part of Portugal. If weather is neither here nor there for you, you're here to experience the culture. You know, northern Portugal is quite good. It's not as hot as Australia gets during summer, and along the coast, it is quite pleasant.
Get as hot.
Oh, it does rain a lot though. Just be aware.
But the humidity levels here are very, very high. So take that into consideration. Then, of course, you've got the south of the country, the Algarve part of the country, where the weather is decent. Not as good as the Costa del Sol, I don't think, but decent nonetheless. But the big problem here, when those storms come through, the levels of humidity, the dampness, and a lot of homes, surprisingly, especially some of the older homes, don't have central heating. So you're going to have to take that into consideration as well. But from my experience here, having an apartment, I only need.
Okay, I mean, that's just trivial. You can just buy heaters, easy enough. A lot of apartments have inbuilt heating systems. So, yeah, it depends on the age of the property that you're getting. Obviously, older ones, yeah, they're not going to have the modern architecture and conveniences supplied. So you're going to have to really look around to see what you want to do. There's nothing, as I said, that you can just get a heater. It's just trivial.
Need to put the heating on. We just have electric heaters. Only need to put them on in the afternoon when it starts to get a little bit cooler, maybe in the morning as well. So there's not a huge heating expense, but on days like today when the sun is shining, there's virtually no wind at all. The winter temperatures here are very, very attractive. Imagine being able to sit outside, have a coffee, have a beer on the 30th of December. In many parts of Europe, that is impossible. But here, not the case. And this is what I'm talking about. Not sure if you can see it there, but it's 12:30. It is the 30th of December, outside today, enjoying a nice cold beer. It doesn't get much better than this, I'm going to be honest. Cheers. And just being able to do this in the middle of winter is all the quality of life some people need, myself included. Now, I was going to talk about cost of living here in Portugal in this video, but nowadays, with information that is readily available on the internet, no need to talk about cost of living because you can easily check all of the data that you need when it comes to cost of living. For example, this site here, Numbeo, you can easily get an idea for the cost of living in a country like Portugal or any other country for that matter, with websites like this one here. So if we take a look at some of the basic information, a family of four estimated monthly costs at 2,396.3 euros without rent in Portugal. A single person estimated monthly costs are 667.9 euros without rent, and the cost of living in Portugal is, on average, 36.4% lower than in the United States. And all of the other information that you need, restaurant prices, market prices.
Okay, so cost of living in Portugal is definitely cheaper than Australia. For what you would get for $15 at a cafe, in Australia, if you were buying a couple of coffees and a couple of pastries, you would end up paying like that $15 to $20 mark, depending on what they were. In Portugal, you're looking at probably under €5 easily. So it does work out quite well. Now, €5, that would probably work out to about $7, $8 by the time that you did the conversion. So it definitely does work a lot cheaper. One thing I do notice though is international products tend to mirror across what they would equal worldwide, whereas if you get local brands, it's a lot cheaper. And yeah, it definitely works out. Just be aware though, and be respectful. It's good to understand. Obviously, the Portuguese cost of living is cheaper because the wages are lower here, and it's just an unfortunate reality for the type of jobs that you get paid for here. It's a lot lower than what you would get doing the same job in just across the border in Spain, or obviously in the USA or Australia. So just be aware that if you're looking to just come and find a job here, it's likely to be at a lower paid, unless it's a specific skilled job that you've teed up before you've moved here.
Transportation prices, utilities, sports and leisure, childcare, clothing, rent per month, apartment prices to buy, salaries and financing, and general prices in Portugal are here on websites like this one. If you want to compare the cost of living, let's say, between Spain's capital city, Madrid, and Portugal's capital city, Lisbon, you can easily do that too. And here we go, we can see cost of living comparison between those two cities. And basically, cost of living in Madrid, 6.1% higher than in Lisbon without rent. But an interesting statistic, for me at least, is this one here, that rent prices in Madrid are 7.6% lower than in Lisbon nowadays. So cost of living comparisons easy with websites like the one I've just shown you there. And this video is not.
So yeah, rent's really expensive in Portugal. So if you can do it, it is better to buy.
Sponsored by that website. Now, another thing that we need to talk about is language. And yes, if you are planning a move to Portugal, you will need to learn the Portuguese language. However, people here do speak English. You can find people speaking English virtually everywhere you go, young people especially, more so in the big cities, but in general, the Portuguese population have English language skills.
Okay, so to Australians, like when you go to Asia, when you go to a supermarket, obviously food and beverage tends to, like, the signs tend to be translated from the respective Asian languages into English as well. Whereas in Portugal, it is just straight out in Portuguese. So you need to know what the products are if you're going to find them. Now, it's pretty easy. Just use a translator like Google Translate or Chat GPT. You can type it in, it'll tell you what the Portuguese translation is. Pretty straightforward, you'll gradually learn. But if you learn the basics of, basic greetings, thank you, and please, good morning, good night, all those sort of things, you'll pick up the rest relatively easy. And yeah, it is a hard language to learn though. If you are looking to do a lot of language prep before you come, make sure you're learning European Portuguese and not Brazilian Portuguese, because they are different. And it's not just a little bit, they're markedly different. So you do need to know European Portuguese.
but you need to learn the local language if you want to integrate and enjoy your time in this country, because you can't depend on finding people everywhere you go that speak English.
Obviously, in the inner cities, you're going to find a lot of people who speak English because it's a heavy tourist center, and a lot of places require their staff to have an English background. Whereas if you go out into the rural districts, you're going to find that it's not going to be as easy to find people who speak English.
Because the sunsets here are unbelievable. But I want to talk about housing, because it has become an issue and it could put a lot of people off moving to this country. Now, and cities like Lisbon now are almost prohibitive as far as housing is concerned. Locals have been complaining for a number of years that there's too many foreigners coming into the country, creating a housing crisis.
Okay, so that was all on the back of a specific visa where you could get a visa if you spent 500,000 euros. And obviously, all these people came and bought up property with it. They'd get the visa, which gave them access to the European zone. And it was quite lucrative. And prices skyrocketed, especially in places like Lisbon and Porto. So this is where you have to do your research. You'll be able to find reasonable priced housing in those locations. You just have to be prepared that, it's not going to be in the inner city tourist district. So if you're on a budget and you're prepared to travel half an hour to work, I mean, if you lived in one of the cities in Australia anyway, you probably still had to travel half an hour to an hour to work every day. So yeah, just come prepared, and if worst comes to worst, you can move again once you're here. So
Over tourism as well, and that is a real issue currently for locals and also people that are looking to move to this country. Affordable housing, decent housing. So keep that in mind. So my advice to people that are considering moving to Portugal.
yeah, you also got to be aware that as far as housing goes, they don't do housing developments here. It's not like in Australia where there's whole suburbs pop up. Here, it's high density housing, so you're likely going to be living in an apartment. There are houses around, but a lot of them are older. So yeah, I haven't seen a lot. They're very much an apartment unit style society in Portugal. It's very limited space, but the apartments are nice. They're very big. They're not like a not they're not small. So again, do your research, but yeah, likelihood is be prepared for an apartment.
Portugal in 2025 is look for a part of the country away from the crowds. That is, don't go to the capital city, Lisbon. Don't go to the second biggest city, Porto.
Do you really want to live in a tourist district? You know what it's like in Australia when you're surrounded by tourists. It can get frustrating if you're trying to go about your daily life. And especially as far as traffic goes, because you get a lot of Europeans driving through, and yeah, and the way the road network was created, obviously it's very old, the country, so it means that there's a lot of old housing, a lot of old style roads and access were here long before cars even existed. So a lot of that just fits straight into what was already here, which means that everything is kind of just squished into small access points, which means traffic gets very dense, it gets slow. So, yeah, you're going to have to really be prepared for that if you want to live in an idyllic location that is close to tourist districts. It could get very, very, very painful.
Move inland, move away from the coast, and you should be able to find decent quality housing for a decent price still. That would be my advice. Now, on to the next part. Now, another potential con of moving to a country like Portugal, as with Spain, is bureaucracy. But I'm going to be honest, my experience with Portuguese bureaucracy hasn't been all that bad, especially when it comes to pay.
Okay, so bureaucracy, you really want to know Portuguese or take someone with you who knows Portuguese. Do not even attempt to walk into a government office thinking that they're going to speak English. They don't, and why should they? You, you know, just like if someone from a foreign country walked into a government office in Australia, are you going to speak their language? So organize a translator if you don't speak Portuguese, or organize someone or an entity, a business to help you through the process. I had my wife who speaks fluent Portuguese, and even that we had a lot of problems because you get a lot of half information. Websites aren't updated. Staff, the the relaxed lifestyle, as I should say, they really they wanted to just move you on if they couldn't help you. So they would just tell you a few things and then, expect you to leave. So, yeah, you really got to be prepared. Make sure this is an area that you do as much research as possible and don't rely on just taking a few basic things in that you could do in Australia and get away with it, because it is a lot more there is a lot more bureaucratic red tape in Portugal than there is in Australia. And it is an area that you really do need to understand to avoid frustration. So my to easily sum it up, have every bit of every document that you have as far as ID, finances, thing that update it to the most recent one you can physically get your hands on. A lot of identity documents can't be older than 3 months from issue point. So like a birth certificate has to be 3 months, under 3 months from issue. And it's also got to be put into Portuguese. So you have to get it translated as well. So do your research, be prepared.
Paying housing tax and things like that, getting things done. It's a little bit slower than some people would be used to, but it does work. Another story could be getting a visa to live here permanently. I haven't gone through that process yet, but from all reports, it can be a little bit time consuming, but there's plenty.
Yes, do the entity that will help you go through the process. I married a Portuguese citizen, so I went through that process, and it was relatively straightforward. So surprisingly, that was a lot easier than Australia.
Plenty of people willing to help you out nowadays, help you with that process. So dealing with bureaucracy
A lot cheaper too. I think it only cost me $25.
Should not be an issue. When it comes to dealing with other services here, for example, banks, again, hit and miss. My experience with the bank that I use has been positive. I know the manager, we're in contact, send him an email if I need something done.
A lot of the banks in Portugal are European wide and therefore have wider European standards. And yeah, didn't have a problem with our bank. We had a good person, and create relationships. They will help you, and go back and see the same person over and over again, and create that one-to-one style service, and you'll get by. Well, ours was quite good.
So in that regard, I haven't got any complaints, but other people I understand when it comes to dealing with these big companies here in Portugal, whether it's banks, telecommunications companies, they're all the same. Not easy to get things done, but it can be done. And as I said, the question is making relationships if that is possible. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is tourism here in Portugal, which can be a pro and also a con. A pro because of all of the tourist dollars or tourist euros that come into Portugal, millions and millions and millions of euros coming into the country as a result of a booming tourism market. But if you're planning on coming and living here in Portugal, tourism could also be a con, especially if you're not in the tourism sector working. That is because sleepy villages, sleepy coastal towns that seem idyllic in the winter months can
Yes, this is 100% true. This is what happens. Portugal is one of those places that is over. There's more tourists than it can cope with. It just consistently a heavy tourist district, pretty much almost all year round. Mostly in Lisbon and Porto, but obviously there's more when summer comes around. You get, if you're on the coast, you're going to get a lot of people come to the beach. It's just the way it is. If you don't want to be around the tourists, it can be quite painful. Again, this is an area, do your research, make sure if it's not a tourist district, if that's not what you want. All right, we're going to leave it there. And yeah, make sure you do like and subscribe this channel though, from Spain Speaks, because the more information we get out there by the smaller channels, the better informed potential immigrants are going to be when they come, and it reduces frustration. All right, have a great day. Speak to you later.